I just love teaching this process. And so for classic miracle number 4, I'm going to be able to tell you the story of someone who I shared this process with. Actually, I shared it with her father. So her name was Kathy, and his name was Mike. And Mike eventually became one of our 8 to Great certified trainers, and he just loved this program. But when he first came across this material and understood about getting the picture and think it till you feel it and all that good stuff, he just was very excited because he was a principal. And he said, this is going to help a lot of my students to envision passing the test or getting a good ACT score or whatever. But he ended up using it beautifully with his own daughter. So his daughter, Kathy, was a runner. And that particular year, she was a senior, but the story had started when she was a freshman. Kathy was such a good runner that she qualified for state her freshman year in the 400-meter dash. And she was so excited. Well, the day came for the race, and she's, warming up, and her coach comes over and to her and says, okay, Davis, you got this. Just don't scratch. Now, scratching is when you start your race before the starting gun. And in a normal race of a season, you wouldn't be disqualified. But at state, if you scratched, you were disqualified. So even though she'd never scratched, he put that idea in her head, and she scratched for the first time in her running career. And of course was devastated. But, there's always next year, right? And so she came back the following year as a sophomore, qualified again. She was so excited. And again, up comes the coach. And she's kind of nervous, and he says, okay, Davis, of course you know not to scratch. Well, the brain works on pictures. And the brain doesn't have a picture for the word not. So what did she visualize again? Scratching. And she scratched again. Now, I would love to tell you that junior year, it didn't happen, but it did. Can you imagine her fear going into senior year at the state track meet? Oh my gosh. 3 years in a row. I mean, everybody at the race knows that's the girl that scratched 3 years in a row. But the good news was her coach had resigned. And so all that year she'd been being coached by a different guy. And early in the season, Kathy's dad went up to the coach and said, you're not going to mention that scratch word to my daughter, are you? He said, no. And he goes, because I just took this 8 to Great course. And it's all about what you think about, you bring about. And the coach said, I know all about that, sir. Believe me, I'll take good care of Kathy. So she qualified for state. And he said, Kathy, this is the coach, I want you to meet me half an hour before anyone else gets there at the track. And so she did. And he saw that all the people were setting up, and he walked her over to where all of the medals were laying out on the table so beautifully. And he said, Kathy, would you pick up one of these medals? And she said, what are you talking about? And he said, just pick one up to see how heavy it is. And she goes, can I do that? And he said, yeah, we're going to put it right back. And so she picked up a medal to see how heavy it was. And he goes, okay, I want you to imagine how heavy it's going to feel around your neck. And she did. They put the medal back, and then he said, okay, now I want you to go up on that podium, up on the stage. I want you to pick any of those 3 slots up in the podium. And I want you to look out and see what this place looks like from the podium, because that's what you're going to be seeing later on today. And she did. And as she stood on the podium, she cried. And she said, I'm so nervous. And he said, don't be. You have this. Kathy won 3rd in state her senior year, and she did not scratch. Definitely a classic miracle. Till next time.